Okay, everybody, welcome to the Leicester Lives podcast. In association with Nolita Coffee NYC. Quality New York coffee for your home, delivered directly to your home. And as always, I'm going to ask a request. As you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. At the minute, we're getting plenty of views, but we do need more subscribers. So just take 10 seconds of your time, please. Go over to that subscribe button, hit it, and I'll be your friend forever. Now, really looking forward to this one today, because with me, I've got Scott Eustace. I think we can safely say he's had an interesting Leicester life and very much a roller coaster of a football career. Scott, thanks very much for coming in today and being a guest on the Leicester Lives podcast.
Good evening. Good evening to you, Justin, and viewers. Nice to be here. Grateful to be here, and hopefully tell my little story and see where it takes me.
Fantastic. I always say, let's roll it all the way back to the start. Tell me about growing up in Leicester, Scott.
Yeah, a bit of mixed emotions from growing up myself. I'm from a broken family, so I spent some time in this area, Uppingham Road area. My father, bless him, who's not with us any longer, Barry, very proud football supporter of me growing up. He had a brother that lived in Thurmby Lodge area, where I went to school, and then my mother, she lived in Thurmaston, where I went weekends, spent the time there at weekends. So, sort of here, there and everywhere.
How would you describe your childhood, Scott? Happy?
Yeah, I'd say so. Take my hat off to my dad. Done the best he could for me. Many years on his own, working all hours God sends. And I was a black child in a difficult area back in '75, and he was not my real father, but he is my real father, if you get what I mean. So plaudits to him. And yeah, growing up, it was sort of, I had friendships in 3-4 different areas, so I knew a lot of people, and that stood me in good stead as I got older. I got on well with a lot of people. And the football side of things, I didn't really play much football as a kid. It wasn't like a mad passion for me. It sort of came later, coming up to the end of my first school terms.
How did you find school?
I enjoyed school because I'm kind of a social person, you know, like all kids like playing around, don't they, and having a laugh and this and that and the other. I thought I was quite not too bad academic, but when I got told off, I used to get told off 3 or 4 different times because obviously I was raised by my uncle, my dad, when he finished nights, and then I'd have to wait till weekends and get told off again at weekends. So it's pretty much of a domino effect of being bad. So limited, really.
So when did the interest in football first come about then?
You see the size I am now, I weren't really much, obviously I'm a lot more weightier now, but I wasn't really much shorter at the age of 10 years old, and I just started playing football in the playground at that age, and there was always a school football team, and I used to spend time at my mum's at weekends, which was Thurmaston, and being where the football, my school was, Thurmby Lodge, it was difficult, so the boys were asking me for a long time to play. Can we play? Because I was quite decent in the playground, quite a fast runner, and strong, physically strong as well. So I gave in to some of them in the end, and but it was on the credentials that my football teacher at school came to fetch me. So he came all the way to Thurmaston every Saturday morning to pick me up to play for them. That was the end of year 5. Then at year 6, I sort of excelled very quickly. I think I was quite fortunate because the East Leicester manager was the manager of Rowletts Hill School, where my good friend Ian Thompson played, who played for England. And he was a centre forward and I was a centre half, and I had good games against him. So it sort of got me straight more or less into the... Before I knew it, I'd been played 10 games. I played for Leicester Boys.
Were you always a centre half, or did you fancy yourself up front in the early years?
I think I should have always been a centre half, to be honest, but everybody likes to score a goal now and again, didn't they? So on the Sunday teams, I played in midfield, which I was decent in midfield, but the higher you go up, the more technical all the players are, and you know your limits, so get to the back, Jack.
So when did you first think, Scott, that football could become a career? Because it's one thing you're enjoying your football as you're getting older, but it's a big jump to becoming a pro footballer.
Without sounding like I'm being big-headed, or like I've just gone back to that 10 games and I was playing for East Leicester. Things just was successful for me from playing there to going up to senior school to passing the trials, and then it was like there was about 8 or 9 of us that every year we had to have the trials, but we knew we was getting in. So everything I touched at football was like a success, and before I knew it, there was scouts watching from Leicester, and I went down there, played a game there, got signed on after one game on schoolboy forms. So there was no real thoughts of anything at the age of 13, 14, other than we're just playing a whole heap of football. Well, I'm playing for the school, I'm playing for Leicester boys, I'm playing for Leicestershire, playing for the county, I'm playing for Leicester City, training on a Thursday. I mean, every day was more or less football. There was no thoughts of anything until it came to like 15, where managers were starting to come to big games, you know, like the cup finals of your Sunday league team, and scouts were coming to watch, because the scouts were having to make a decision then of who's making the schoolboy cut to having a 2-year apprenticeship at Leicester. So before I left school, it was already offered to me I was going to have an apprenticeship at Leicester. And I don't know, nothing was really a surprise at them times, and I really ain't being big-headed, but when the apprenticeship did start, it was a massive shock to the system, because me and my mate Ian Thompson, he was my close ally, he was my enemy at school, but on the football pitch, because he went to a different school. He went to City Leicester, I went Hamilton, and he always used to score, even though I'd have a good game, but he always used to score. He's a brilliant footballer, by the way. And yeah, we presumed, because now when they have an academies, they sort of nurture them into it. But back then, other than playing a few games for the elders and that on a Saturday, and then going to the Leicester City match as a schoolboy, you're not really down there training in the holidays. And I'm talking like 35 years ago now. So obviously a lot of things have revolved since then. So we thought we were just going to be going down there and playing football, you know, like we had no idea of running up mountains in that every day for 3 weeks, and that's like doing the runs for when the pros come back in. So we've done 3 weeks of running, and then we've got to do another 2 weeks of running when the pros come back in, and that. And we didn't really kick a football for 3 weeks, and we were going home. We couldn't walk some days when we went home, and it was an eye opener. And when you're around technically better players, when the balls do come out, you sort of have to up your game now. You know, like I'd never been used to not being in the team. No matter what level I played at, until I became an apprentice, I found myself not in the team at the start of the season, because they've got the second years as well. Do you know? So the second years, they're more experienced, they're more stronger, they're probably technically better, technically accustomed to everything. So yeah, it's a bit of a culture shock to me, being on the subs bench in the first years of my apprenticeship. But it's a learning curve, isn't it? Everything was a learning curve.
And who was the Leicester manager then, and who were the main players?
Well, there was a new crew took over when we started. So when we started, it was already set in place that Brian Little had just taken over for the oncoming season, which was going to be my first season. So his staff consisted of himself, John Gregory, Alan Evans, and my youth team coach was Steve Hunt, who was magnificent, by the way. And David Nish was sort of the chief scout, who had a lot of input with our youth team as well. So he was very close to us, and they were all great footballers in the day as well. And I always, as I've grown up, bypassing some years, and we'll go back to it, but any coach that tried to coach me or wanted to coach me, if they couldn't do it themselves, I didn't have the same effect as myself as when somebody could do it themselves. For example, Roy McFarlane became my Cambridge coach. When he would demonstrate something, he could do it. And like, because he played 56 times for England as well, in my position, and he could still do it at 58 years old, whatever he was. I was in awe of him, and he'd make me go out there. He wouldn't make me, he'd make myself, right, he's showed me what to do now. You don't need to show me again. But when somebody like, say, Andy King, when I was my Mansfield manager, was telling me how to head it, and he couldn't head the ball himself. It didn't matter to me that he'd played for England and he'd played for Everton and played in the top league, because he was just ranting and raving all the time, but he couldn't do it himself. So I didn't respect that element of my coaches that I played under.
So that was a pretty strong coaching lineup at Leicester at the time.
Very strong. I mean, I'd heard of Alan Evans, John Gregory. It sounds a bit bad towards Brian, but I'd not heard of Brian Little. I'd heard of Steve Wood, because I used to collect Panini stickers and that as well when I was a kid. And I was, like I said, I wasn't hell-bent on football as a 3 to 9-year-old, and then it came more and more and more. But yeah, there was a very good staff, the good staff members there. There was very high quality. They all knew what they were doing, and they all put big legwork in as well. I suppose most coaches do, but I can only sort of address what I was around at the time. And Leicester City is a very big club. It's my hometown club, and I was a part of a very good setup. And the 4 years that they were there, they got to Wembley 3 out of 3 years. Obviously, they lost to Blackburn, they lost to Swindon, they beat Derby, and then the 4th year I was there, they was in the Premier League. So quite a good success story from Brian Little's reign.
And because of where we're going to explore in a short while, what was the sort of culture around the club? Was it a drinking club? I mean, you hear the stories of, Arsenal at the time, Tony Adams and the like. He always said, training, all the players straight out.
I wouldn't say it was a drinking club. Excuse me. I'd say it was segregated, with certain members that did go out on a Wednesday after a game, and you had the Sunday night drinking team that went to Brannigan's. So there was all different segregated. They didn't drink as a whole. I can't really comment too much when Martin O'Neill was there, but I did hear that they had a good gang of drinkers, and it's sort of what Martin O'Neill did in his day. He carried it through, and he was okay with it, like the big players. And it disappoints me that I wasn't involved with that, because it was just sort of after I left that Martin took over from Mark McGee. And the big players, they're one of the best Leicester teams I'd seen, to be honest. They got silverware, they won the Coca-Cola Cup, whatever it was called. They got there another time, and they were going like places like Man United and winning. It was a good team, very good, hard-working team, and I enjoyed watching that era.
Because I think a lot of people would, or maybe a lot of young people now, would be surprised that footballers did used to enjoy going out. I remember back when McAllister and Mocklin signed together, and they were staying at the Holiday Inn, and we used to go there for a drink after the match, and I mean, they must have been quick shower change, and they were in the bar at the Holiday Inn by 6 o'clock. You just never see that these days.
No, I mean, the game's evolved a lot to back in them days. I'm not saying it weren't a tough game then, but the early burly start of the season, there's always a Saturday, Tuesday game, but like in the top flight, the levels that they demand, and these players go. I don't think drinking, you can't be found wanting no more. Like the Saturday, Tuesday. I mean, some of them top players, they're playing like 70 games a season, and it's Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. Then there's Champions League. Sometimes it's like Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Mondays. It's ridiculous, and it just don't go hand in mouth or tongue in cheek or whatever the saying is. I couldn't visualise it being how it was back in the day. I mean, even like your Keanes and that, one of my heroes. Like, I love watching Roy Keane play football. I love him as a pundit. But he was a big drinker, that's not many years ago. It's like 15, 20 years ago he stopped playing. And I don't know how they got through it. I don't know how they did it back then, because he played Champions football. But like him, his knees were, his body was failing him. Maybe, I'm not in no era to criticise or whatever, but maybe these are the reasons why he didn't sustain a longer career. You know, like he got a lot of injuries, Roy did, in his hips, but was that how he put himself in, or was that because of his culture, drinking culture? I don't know.
No. So you're on the apprenticeship scheme at Leicester. You got the first year. Presumably, you lose a few of the boys at the end of the first year. Not everybody goes on to the second year. You're pretty confident in your own ability?
After the first year's gone and I see how cutthroat it is, because I think from our second year lads, 3 players got taken on. And one of my good friends, Tony Thorpe, his name was, he got released, and he was talented, but I didn't believe he did enough in his second year to get a contract either. But he went on to great things at Luton. Yeah. Like he ended up scoring 30 plus goals at Luton Town, and scoring the winner against Newcastle in the FA Cup, getting bought for £1 million from Fulham. And so there is the other side to getting released, where if you still have that hunger for football and you have the ability, sometimes it's somebody needs to take a chance on you, you know, or believe in you. I mean, he's gone there and he's more or less in the first team, like within a year, you know, and then he never looked back. Everything he touched turned to gold. So going into my second year, I wasn't the confident lad I was when I was 14, 15, because there's a lot of self-doubt because of you're up against, or you're competing against. Like I was competing against somebody that was in my position, that had been at Lilleshall, Centre of Excellence for England from under 11s, and you think to yourself, well, he must be this, he must be that, he must be this, he must be that. But you have to find that inner strength to believe in yourself. And I think there was one particular game where I think we got beat at home in the youth team, and I managed to just pull off some channel balls that I'd been trying and practicing in training. And the first team coach there, John Gregory. Now, the mental torture that these coaches give you on these seasoned pros, I didn't understand it at the time, but to get praise off them, it's like, wow. Do you know, like, wow, what did I do there? And you remember what you did, and you remember how you infiltrated it, and it just came. And then all the practicing you'd done, the timing of this, because I could defend, I could head a ball, I could do this, but my distribution wasn't that good at that time. And then when you used to play at Beaver Drive, it was like playing at Wembley, because like the pitch was just immaculate. So I was went from strength to strength by that one little bit of praise from the coach, that he didn't just sabotage me, he sabotaged everyone. But then there's always a professional that would take you under his wing, like, because when you used to try and train with the big boys, if it wasn't Julian Joachim, who was my age and who was exceptional, do you know, like he was smashing it in the first team when he was 17, absolute phenomenon. Like, and this pro that took me under his wing, he used to say to me, do you know when these pros are bang at you, they're in your head, and they're testing your mental strength, because one day you're going to be out there in front of 20,000 people, and they're going to be your wingman. It's like going to war. So there's 11 of us going out there, and you're going to get fans that are baying for your blood, wanting you to make a mistake. We need to know if you're going to go under, or you're going to sink or swim. So if you can't take it on this football training field, how are you going to take it out there?
And who was the senior pro who took you under his wing?
His name was David Lowe. He was a Scouser. I think we signed him from Wigan. Always used to practice. He wasn't the greatest striker, but he was always stay behind, and he'd get me to stay behind, because my touch wasn't that good. I was a bit heavy-footed, and we just used to do this feel the ball, just touch it up here, and like, while we're spending hour or hour and a half, 2 or 3 times a week, it sort of nurture you, like, of what lies ahead. Do you know, where when you're trying to make a name for yourself or trying to be seen, and you're training with the pros and they're all slaughtering you and the coach is slaughtering you, it's an easy place to go under. But for him to just give that guidance and, like, he said, look, you're a big centre half. Do you know, like, when you're marking like David Speeder, mark him out. You're playing for your life, Scott. Just because he shouts at you or swears at you, go through him. Because like back in them days, you could go through him. You could go through people. Do you know, like it was a part of the game. Rich Smith, he was one of my idols at Leicester. My mate cleaned his boots. I cleaned Walsh's boots. One tough guy. But we used to learn from him in a different way. He didn't need to talk to us. I could just be on his side, and he could just guide me with positioning. And do you know, he was softly spoken for an odd man. He wouldn't rah. But he commanded the respect for how tough he was. He was the top dog in my eyes and my mate's eyes. But he was a friend to us as well as a senior pro. Because I think Rich was about 25 or something when we were about 24, when we was about 18, 19. Wasn't that much older, but he was in the first team. He was a hometown boy.
That's right.
And a lot of his friends were our friends as well, became our friends because he's a South Leicester lad. And we love Rich Smith, yeah. Terminator, we call him Smudger.
So, when do thoughts start to turn to the first team?
Truthfully, they didn't. Sometimes it was a bit weird, really, because when I was a second year YTS, I played 32 games for the reserves out of a possible 34 or something, or probably not that many, probably 29 out of 34, whatever. I more or less played the lot. And then the start of my first year professional, there was a lot of pros that were out of the first team when the season started. So they had to play according to the management because they needed to be seen in the reserves to be able to be sold. But that weren't no good for me. So obviously I was a bit of a sulk and a tantrum. So when I was playing away at Blackpool and weren't even in the squad on the reserve games, there were no sign of the first team in my eyes. Like I was, what I've done here, do you know, like, because I'm training well, I'm training this, training that. And there was nobody to come and console you and say, like, look, keep doing this, keep doing that. This is what's happening. So you just had to have a vision in your head of what's going on. Then I just plugged away. And there was an injury crisis because at the time, I think there was about 8 centre-halves in front of me. And then if someone didn't play centre-half, then they'll get Mickey Whitlow to play left centre-half. Simon Grayson could play about 9 different positions at the time. Mark Blake could play centre-half. Every man and his dog would be at centre-half before I'd get a chance, you know. From nowhere, I didn't even... the squad didn't get put up on the Friday. The squads are normally up on a Friday. So we've just reported to the game at home against Bristol City many moons ago. I think I was 18, so what's that, 30 years ago? Someone said something to me, you're on the bench. I'm saying, what? Because obviously if I knew, then I would have phoned my parents and like my dad and that. So you're not allowed no phones on when you're going in the changing room and that. So I'm like, I feel like a school kid. I've put my hand up in this fucking changing room. Sorry about swearing. Put my hand up in the changing room and I've said, Gaffer, can I use my phone, please? He said, phone? He goes, yeah, of course you can, son. Of course you can. He goes, you phone your dad? I goes, yeah. So this is at like 1:45. My dad obviously don't drive and he lives 2 buses away. So I phoned him and said, oh, Dad, I'm on the bench, blah, blah, blah. He said, fucking over the moon, ecstatic. He got down there, left him tickets and he came to the game. I got on for the last 13 minutes. So, but it ended up about 20 minutes because of the injury time and that. And I had about 7-8 touches of the ball in that time. Great time to come on, 3-0 up at home. The game's in the bag. The fans are ole, 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 ole. Bristol City weren't even trying no more. And I got a lot of touches of the ball. I think at the time, I got £450 for the win. I think I got £300 for the appearance. I think I was on £200 basic a week, and I got about £150 for the clean sheet. I bought a car. Bought a car the following week when that wages went into my bank. But a big kick in the nuts, bring me back down to earth after the game. The reserves have to run around the pitch like that were not involved. So I'm like getting stripped off of the kit, all on cloud nine, you know, like ready to go in the bath. John Gregory's gone like, get your kit back on. Got to do 9 laps around the pitch with the reserves. So I thought I'd escape that, but I had to come run with the stiffs around the pitch after the game. But I think I got the best times I've ever got, you know, because I was on a crest of a wave. I didn't really excel from there. I should have kicked on, and it coincided with injuries coming back to the fold. But I'd had a taste of it, and if I'm honest, I wasn't really hungry enough to have a taste. I should have been more hungry. I should have trained harder, if buts and maybes. But then I ended up going on loan to Ireland, out to a team in Ireland called Shelbourne, to gain some physicality. I was a big lad, but being against big Irish centre forwards was what was thought was needed. You know, like Saturday competitive football rather than reserve games where we played against big teams, but the big teams like the Leeds and the Man Uniteds, they had players sulking in the reserves, weren't really bothered, weren't really striving to get in the first team. So it was more beneficial if I tried to gain some experience as an 18-year-old playing Saturday 3 p.m. football in Ireland. That didn't pan out, and when I came back, all my managerial staff had left and gone to Aston Villa.
What sort of standard was it over in Ireland? What would you sort of compare it to?
It's a difficult one because I only played 2 games. So I'd like to say the Championship 2, which used to be Division 3. But I don't think I've played enough games to pass judgment because I played against a top 4 side, and then I played against the mediocre, like mid-table team that beat us. When you're a young lad that has no idea how your team members play either, and it was sort of thrown into the Spitfire. Is that the right word? I don't know. So I don't know. I can't really pass judgment on that one.
So when you come back, you're only a young lad. You've tasted the first team action, but now you're out the picture. It must have been playing on your mind now.
When I come back, I'm sort of rubbing my hands, and day 2 training session, I trained with the youth team, been carted off to the youth team the day before, and I'm not backwards at coming forwards and saying what I think. So I've gone and rapped the coach's door and introduced myself and telling them like I'm a second-year pro. I'm not training with the youth team again. So I've trained with the youth team. I've then played every reserve game, the last 15 reserve games, captaining the reserves for the last 9 games. I think we beat Man United 3-1. I think it was done this family night of football. We did really well. And I went in to knock the manager's door with confidence, because like going back to what I said earlier, everything I'd touched in football had worked for me. Whatever team I'd wanted to play for, sign for, or I didn't have trials with Leicester City. I got offered schoolboy forms. I got offered an apprenticeship. I got offered a pro contract. I didn't go in confidently because of everything's worked for me. I went in confident because I was playing really well. I was the captain of the reserves. I felt like I was probably knocking on the door to get into the already relegated Premier League first team. Mark McGee was in there, and he told me straight away, no conversation, there's 9-10 centre-halves ahead of you that I have to offload. My first thoughts and priorities to try and keep Leicester in the Premier League, which was already relegated. Well, not mathematically, and he had his feet on the table, smoking a cigar, and I just didn't wait around. It hurt because this is my hometown club, and in hindsight, when he'd left 3 months into the following season and Martin O'Neill took over, a lot of the young lads was still there, and he gave a lot of them a chance, including my friend Sam McMahon, Stewie Wilson, and a few others. And yeah, I feel that things were different. Things might have changed, turned out differently as well. But
do you almost feel, Scott, because it had almost come easy to you? You know, when you were sort of growing up, you were the best player in the team. It just organically happened that you became a footballer. Did that make you less able to sort of cope with the disappointment and maybe not making it into the first team? It's
a bit of a tricky question, really. I understand the question, but because I've never felt that before, I felt my reaction to it by asking the manager. I think it was March. My contract expired in June. I didn't sit still. I typed letters to all the clubs in the Midlands, at the lower levels, your Northamptons, your Mansfields, etc., etc. They all responded, but they all responded that they don't need anybody. But thankfully, at the time, our reserves played Mansfield, and our reserves were littered with experienced first teamers, and I was the youngest lad in the team that found it very easily playing with these. There were kind of superstars, really, for that Pontins League, playing Mansfield outfit. They were playing the youth team and first-year pros. They were littered with young kids. Technically very good, but obviously it was easy. And after that game, it fell for me again. Like Andy King had had my letter. The club had returned the letter, but he'd now seen me play in the flesh. And he spoke to me after the game, took my number. 2 days later, he'd offered me a contract, and I obliged. So things fell for me again, like because of that reserve game. But I don't know. I feel like I had the bit between my teeth to make something work. Do you know, like I didn't rest on my laurels, because it's a tricky time when your contract expires in June, and if nothing's in the pipeline, you then go have 8 weeks break, and then you're coming back to no club. So I moved quickly.
Bit of a culture shock going from Premier League Leicester City to Mansfield Town?
It was a culture shock as well, yeah. So from the dizzy heights of going in training at 9:30 in the morning with all your shorts, your socks, your towel, your slips, your flip-flops, your boots, all on your peg where you are, to turning up with your own kit at Mansfield, cleaning your own boots to a certain degree, and taking your own kit and washing it every single day. The training pitches at Leicester are like playing at Wembley, and then you're training at schools at Mansfield or on the carpet at the top, where there's no youth team putting the goals out for you. You're putting your own goals out, and you're helping pick up all the bibs and the cones, and and then cleaning your boots afterwards. Massive culture shock. But like anything, you soon get to grips with it.
And how did the fans at Mansfield take to you? Because, you know, we said earlier, it's a tough old place, Mansfield. I go up there a fair bit for work.
I think fans are fans, ain't there? There's fans like Cardiff, which I've never seen anything like in my life. Still racist, bags on the red, Ku Klux Klan. But you give your all to a football team, and the fans can work out a kiddo, and they can work out somebody that gives their all. They're forgiving, but if you're giving your all and you make a mistake after mistake after mistake, then it's the managerial side to take you out of the fold. I mean, we had a player called Jimmy Willis at Leicester. I've never seen anything in my life like it. We had a 4-4 draw at Christmas against Watford, and he had an absolute nightmare. But I was sat next to his family and his child and his wife. It was brutal. And if I could rescue somebody, I would have rescued Jimmy Willis that day. To be fair to him, he never played again for about a year and a half. And he worked hard at his game. And Alan Evans had one game in charge as caretaker manager against Arsenal, and Jimmy Willis played that game in the Premier League, marking Ian Wright and Alan Smith, and he was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So in football, it's never over until it's over. That bloke trained every day with that brutal attack, never ever played in the first team again for a year and a half. That's probably something like 35 games where he was in the reserves every single week. And he just got on with it. He had to stick off the lads in training, and he just got on with it. And it was a nice touch to see him be on a winning team and have such a great performance against a fantastic Arsenal team. And I'm very proud of it. I was very proud to go in next day and tell him, shake his hand, look him in the eye and say, do you know what, if anyone deserved that, it was you. because going back to what you're saying about the fans turned on him very badly that day.
Remember.
It was awful. Boxing Day it was.
You're at Mansfield, enjoying your football now, but you're out and about in Mansfield. You're getting to know the local area. What was happening at this time?
Well, do you know, I as a person I escaped the years of raves and techies and things like that my mates were doing when I was 16, 17. I'd worked hard at my apprenticeship, my pro contract at Leicester. I'd go out now and again, but it was neither here nor there. So when we got to Mansfield, I chose to live in Mansfield. I could have travelled 45 miles up the road, but I wanted to take myself away from temptations. And I did that, and I lived in digs in Mansfield. But there was four other lads that lived in the digs with me. Now, every Wednesday when the season gets going, because we were sponsored by Mansfield Bitter, our presentations were not like opening schools or restaurants or going to hospitals. They were going to the local boozer, playing darts and dominoes and pool with the locals and getting given 11 gallons by the Bureau to drink on a Wednesday night. And there was a lot of families in our football team, like lads that lived in Doncaster that were married with families that didn't want to come all the way back to Mansfield to do the presentation. So we found ourselves putting our hands up and doing them every week. I became good at drinking. Something I'd have left behind and escaped from and never had no interest in. So I was out every Wednesday. I always fought the scales. We used to get weighed Monday and Fridays, and I was like bribed or blackmailed. If I'm over this such weight, I won't be playing on the Saturday and this, that and the other. So because of the heavy drinking sessions on Wednesdays, I then had an awful training session on Thursdays. I'd be in the gym Thursday night on the bicycle, on the rower. I'd have a black bin liner on. I'd be in the sauna like a jockey just to get these pounds off. I always played if I was £3 over or whatever I was. But yeah, the Wednesday nights became ridiculous over a period of time. It wasn't doing damage at the time, but later years it led to damage. When I go out, my behaviour would be responsive differently if I hadn't been out or hadn't been drinking to that if I was at home in bed.
So give me an example of that then, Scott. So you're enjoying your football, you're up in Mansfield, you're getting maybe a bit of a reputation as a drinker, maybe within the club. But I mean, the fans still see you as a professional athlete, but then you're going out into Mansfield, and it's not the biggest place in the world either, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it weren't so much Mansfield, it was the later years at Cambridge, but obviously it's embedded in me that I can drink a lot. I wasn't really one for going out if I was to get injured or this or that or the other, or there was a lads' night out. Something would always happen, and I would be involved or I'd be around the person that's caused it. Not necessarily the proprietor, but I was always in the mix. One time, for example, we played Bolton. No, we didn't play Bolton. We had Bolton next round. We played Wrexham in the FA Cup fourth round. Furthest Cambridge I've ever got. Big FA Cup footage. Like there was round the club all week. The proper FA Cup came round there. It was on Match of the Day. It was a good week of showing what the town's about. We all went out for dinner, broadcasted on BBC One, Match of the Day. We beat Wrexham away. Then our gaffer, fantastic gaffer, one of the best managers I ever worked for, Roy McFarland. What he did was he sort of assembled a team from rejects from all the big clubs. Anyhow, he came on the microphone at the end of the journey back from Wrexham, telling us how proud of us he is, and emphasising, listen, every man and his dog is going to want a piece of you boys tonight. Cambridge is going to be buzzing. If you're going to go out, get off back to your own towns and go out there and celebrate there. Do not go out in Cambridge, whatever you do. Lo and behold, me and two others go out in Cambridge and we have a great night, to be honest. And I'm having a little pee at the side of an alleyway late on before the kebab shop, and one of my colleagues decides to put a big brick through a next window, and police involved. I was about, and that's one of the episodes. And the same guy, we had a dinner do about 4 months later. We'd gone out drinking in the afternoon, and these presentations was generate money for the club because we needed sponsors. So it was a sponsored dinner. Duncan Edwards was the talker. Excuse me. He's put drink in the speaker, do you know? So when this big icon footballer's speaking, it's all crackling. I'm giggling because it was actually funny, but obviously I'm part of it again, and it's all getting documented, and it just sort of, it carried on from there.
Just going on to the FA Cup incident, I mean, you've said McFarland has said don't go out in Cambridge, so difficult conversation with him on the Monday?
Yeah, it was the same Three Musketeers like many times, to be honest, and I was one of them Musketeers. I wasn't the ringleader. It wasn't really a conversation. It was, right, this is what's happening sort of thing, 2 weeks' wages, and it was documented. But at the time, I was playing really, really well. And it was another one of them ones. I wanted to move to Cambridge, but because of how expensive the living was down Cambridge, the contract that I was on was never letting me afford to live down there. So I had to commute, and I wanted a longer contract and I wanted more wages for the following season.
I was going to say, let's put it into some sort of chronological order. So Leicester to Mansfield.
Correct.
Mansfield.
On trial to Lincoln and Chesterfield a week before the season started. There was only 3 months I'd signed for Chesterfield. Then I've ended up at Cambridge from the autumn till the end of the season. I got a contract renewed. We won promotion. And then I did the whole following season at Cambridge. And then I signed for Lincoln, where the wheels really fell off.
I was going to say, the infamous one appearance at Lincoln, I believe. What was the story there, Scott?
The story was I've dropped down a league for about 4 times as much money. If the season ran how I presumed it would run, where I'd be in the first team for the whole season, probably 6 times as much money, and the contract getting ripped up and doubled. So I've gone to Lincoln and I've done it again. I've come away from Leicester. I've asked them to put me up in a hotel. They put me up in an hotel for 8 weeks during the vigorous training regime that they had. Lincoln was like an army barracks. Very, very tough training, but I was prepared for it. I was coming there not to make up the numbers. I was coming there as now an experienced campaigner with 150 league games under his belt to help get Lincoln out of that division. And the manager at the time was Phil Stant, who I'd marked as a centre forward many times. We played for Bury, very talented. He was Army Regiment. He was in the army himself. And I got off to a good start. I played a pre-season friendly. Something happened to my knee. I don't know what it was, but it all tightened up. So I rested it for a few days, came back training, rested it, came back training. It came to the conclusion that I needed surgery. Unfortunate, but it would have only been a 6-week thing. I did play a mere 20 minutes leading up to this, but it was no good. My leg was no good. I went out, I had a drink, got done for drink driving. In my eyes, it's my own punishment, but because the club heard about it, they decided, instead of fining me, they decided to give me a written warning, which it wasn't worthy of a written warning, but I just thought, I don't really get in trouble. Forgetting about all the situations I had prior to the season at Cambridge, I'm not really a trouble lad. Then 2 weeks later, the managers organised players get together for all the new signings that he'd assembled. So an all-day golf day, and then we all go out on the drinking session. I remember one of the lads came up to about 1 a.m. in the morning and says, "Scott, I'm going back to the digs. Come on, we've had a good day. Come with me. Rare, this, that, the other." I said, "No, I'm having a great time. It's all right, mate. It's all right. I'll get my own way back." I didn't go back with him. Then some fracas happened outside a kebab shop. And like I said, the Scott that would be walking out the training gate sober, if I got abused or insulted, I can easily walk away. But the Scots that's drink-fueled, that gets abused, is a total different character. And the fracas ended up getting me sacked. And from there, that's where my career sort of descended.
And were you literally sacked immediately next day?
No, I wasn't sacked. I was. I got arrested the night it happened, and obviously I denied this, that, and the other. But then when it came to the court proceedings, the guy that I had the fracas with didn't turn up at court. It was threatening words of behaviour that the two girls that he was with that I got sent to court for, and the punishment was nothing. It was a nothing thing. So my solicitor just said, plead guilty to it and you'll get a fine and that'll be it, done, finished. So when I pleaded guilty to it, then I've lied to the club about not being involved in X, Y, and Z. But I thought they'd be happy that it's just a fine and it's done and dusted. But obviously I got my contract ripped up and I was left without a football club with a knee injury.
So what happens next? Do you literally sort of pack up from Lincoln back to Leicester?
Well, because I was on probation and I had a lease on a property because I'd moved out of the hotel because it is now 4 months down the line. I was only in the hotel for 8 weeks. So I stayed in Lincoln for a while, waited till I got the surgery done. And then I came back to Leicester. Then the PFA got me to go to Lilleshall where I spent 9 weeks doing my rehab. But after the 9 weeks, it came to light that the operation that I got operated, they'd done the wrong operation on my knee, and I still had the same injury.
And how were you feeling mentally at this time? Because we know where you are physically. You're without a club with a knee injury. But, I mean, that's got to be now from the heights of, like you said, 150 league appearances to suddenly being without a club, bad reputation in the game.
Yeah, the name had gone round. Like, it's like a circular, isn't it? Like a manager will ask a manager that they're familiar with, well, what's up with the guys with this, that, the other one? Oh no, steer clear. Or it's just like any industry, really. If you're a plasterer and you don't turn up on Fridays, it gets other plastering firms get wind of it. And I've been in trouble a couple of times. It don't take a lot to pick up a phone and somebody give you bad press. Do you know? They're not really going to pick up the phone to the manager where you've played 100 games and you've been reliable and you've never been in trouble, are they? They're going to pick up the latter ones where you have been in trouble. So, no complaints there. I didn't really know anything else, so surrendering at that time was never like really in my resume. So I had a friend from football, Sam McMahon. He was at Stevenage. I asked him, can I come and see your physio? And lo and behold, they had a injury. They had a player that had the same injury. It's called a release on your iliotibial band. You've got a band that goes from your hip on the outside down to your knee. It just needed a snip where it would release the tension because it was stretched. It's similar to your Achilles. And I had the operation and I was back ready to play in 6 weeks, but it had taken 18 months to 2 years because I didn't have a club and they didn't know what the problem was, and I'd had surgery and I'd been here and I'd been there and I'd been everywhere. So I'm now 26, 27. I'd signed for Stevenage to sign me on, and they couldn't get me a game in the first team, so they leased me out on loan to Hinckley United.
That was the original Hinckley, wasn't it, before the split?
It was the original, yeah. Dean Thomas was the manager, he was a character as well. He was a character.
And at that time, they were Conference North-South, were they?
Yeah, Conference North. We had a good cut run there as well. We got to the first round proper. So to get to the first, I think you go through 4 preliminary rounds. So it got quite a bit. No, we got to the second round. It got a good bit of revenue for Hinckley United, and the FA Cup were there as well.
And when you went sort of back into football, back into playing after the injury, have you now curbed the drinking, or is the drinking culture still there? Because you're still a young lad.
To be honest, when I first signed for Hinckley on loan, I was going out drinking on a Thursday, quite a lot, thinking I could just turn up. I've been out of the game now for 2 years. I was thinking of the levels I was at to the levels that this is. More for me. After about 6 games, Dean tried to sign someone from Leicester, centre off. It didn't go through on time on the first FA Cup game we had. So I managed to get a game. I knew I was on my way out. I curbed the drinking. The deal didn't go through. I played in the replay. We won. And from there, I was exceptional for the rest of the season. But the drinking went. I thought I could just... I've been back in Leicester for about 6 months, and going out on a Thursday was a regular thing. But it came to an halt. And yes, I had a very good last 25 games for Hinckley. But I was on peanuts. I was working all hours, God sends, in a job.
Yeah.
I didn't pay anything, so I then got a trial back at Cambridge. I'd done my knee again, ended up at Telford, and then my first child was born, and it sort of fitted out of it.
And how did you fare at Telford? Because, I mean, they're a club that's bubbled under the leagues, had some good cut runs over the years. They're fairly prominent, aren't they, without...
Yeah, I mean, Roy McFarlane's good friend took over. I forgot his name now. But the assistant was my assistant manager at Cambridge, David Priest, who sadly passed away a few years after that. He used to play for Luton, had a wizard of a left foot, very good assistant manager at Cambridge. Yet again, the pay structure problem of me not having a club, it's like Telford was signing like people like Lee Mills from Port Vale, putting him on £1,500 a week. And then because I've not got a club, they signed me on a month-to-month contract, putting me on £350 a week. I'm a 27, 28-year-old man now, big man, like with a child, my first child, and everything was month-to-month for me, do you know, like 6 months, contract here, contract there, contract there. I never had that 3 years to relax, or can I go and get a mortgage, or can I go and get this, can I go and get that? I mean, the time I did get a secure contract at Lincoln, that happened, so... No sour grapes, but it was difficult.
So you drift out the game, and it must be difficult, having been to those heights, to just get on with the normal sort of 9-to-5 graft. I believe the PFA were very good to you, weren't they?
There was. Football clubs, not so good to you. While you're there, yeah, okay, they take care of you. Even Leicester City, like... There's no stopping Leicester City from giving you some tickets now and again to go and watch a game, but nothing. But going back to the PFA, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I suppose when I'd let myself down through the troubles that I got myself into, you find yourself, because I got done for drink driving, so I was going on a train all the way to Manchester where the headquarters were, quite regular, and I was dealing with someone called Brendan Batson. I thought I was going to my headmaster, do you know, like I'm in trouble again, but they don't look at you like that. They look at you, you've got a problem, and they're going to solve it, do you know, and they're going to help you solve it. So because they looked at my record, on which is all documented, I think there's about 6 or 7 drinking incidents over the period of 2 years in Cambridge and Mansfield, Cambridge and Lincoln. So they sent me to the Priory Clinic in Nottingham, where they was going to pay £350 a night for me to get rehab for being an alcoholic. So they sat me down with the doctor, and within 5 minutes, the doctor's telling me I'm an alcoholic, and I'm telling him no. And then within 6 minutes, I'm telling him, yeah, maybe. Getting in your head. I don't think I've ever been an alcoholic. I just think I can drink excessively and don't stop. But he then asking questions like, did your behaviour change? Which he did do, yeah. I admitted to that. So he was classing, but they're connected to the Priory Clinic, and obviously they're getting 3,000 odd pounds. You know what I mean? More than that. They're getting like, how much is 30 times that? 300. £10,000 for me to stay there. So I just asked the PFA, look, I'm knee deep in debt, so I'd rather you help me out with my finances than send me here. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. And they paid off my finances for me. And they released my retirement money, and they also released my pension, and they also gave me £5,000 for further education, which I did my lorry licence with. So, yeah.
So presumably the driving ban's over, so you think...
Yeah, well, I didn't use it. I left it in the pot for a while, because this all happened in 2000, and I mean, everything was going round in my head at the time. So obviously I tried to get him back into football in a period of time, and then once that ship had sailed and I'd spent months and stacking shelves in Tesco's on a night shift, massive culture shock. Like, 1 minute you're playing against Ian Wright for Burnley when he was coming to the end of his career in front of 25,000 fans, and the next minute you're hiding on a night shift in Tesco, stacking shelves, trying to earn some money to feed your kid.
Well, it's funny, I was going to ask you about, looking back, maybe a couple of the highs and a couple of the lows, and there's almost, with that little paradox, a high and a low in itself, isn't there? The Ian Wright and the stacking shelves,
Yeah, I mean, as much as people like Ian Wright were... I'm not going to use the word idol, I don't know what they weren't my idols, but I absolutely adored, like, these superstars that banged in goals every week, or centre-halves like Tony Adams that I could stand when I was at Leicester and they're in the tunnel and I'm standing next to them and I'm looking, I was in awe of them. But then when I'm on the pitch with these players like Ian Wright, he was on the bench this particular game. I was at Cambridge. I'm playing for my month-to-month contracts. Like, I need to be playing out my skin. I'm not interested. You little mouth on the bench, and then you coming on and you're trying to say, take your time and take this. I can't stand you. I play football against you, and you're my enemy. I've got no time to talk small talk with you or nothing like that. But then after the game, I want his shirt. I want to talk to him in the bar. He's achieved so much in the game, and yes, I am in awe of them sort of players.
And the low point, if you had to pinpoint one particular... Well, let's go for two low points. One, a footballing low point, and then possibly sort of post-career, because like we said, it is a big culture shift, from being a pro footballer to cracking on with normal life.
I think my biggest... The two low points was the day I got released by Leicester from Mark McGee, and if it was from Brian Little, where... the contract had run its distance. Like, I'd been under him for 4 years. They'd seen you day in, day out, and you just wasn't good enough to make the breakthrough, then fine. But somebody that... I'd been at Leicester since I was 13 years old, and I left at 20. And somebody that was bought in, put on a lot of money, and the magnitude in what he released me, with his feet on the table, smoking a cigar, and the fact that he left my hometown club the following season after 7-8 games and went to Wolves. To somebody have your career in their hands like that and not, in my eyes, not even give a care in the world, and then just go on to better things himself, what he presumed would be better things, that was the low point. But obviously I didn't rest on it, because I went on and whatever and achieved X amount of league games. The other low point was the decision not to go with my friend when he asked me to, you coming back to the room with me when I was at Lincoln, because it's like sliding doors. If you get on the train, this might have happened. If you miss the train, that might have happened. If I'd have gone home with him, I know it definitely wouldn't have happened. So that was a low point.
It's interesting you say about McGee, because I think those of us of a certain age, you mention McGee's name in this city, you won't hear one positive thing, will you, from any supporter of Leicester City?
Well,
I mean, there were a couple of good... I remember that 1-0 away win they had at Manchester City when Mark Robbins scored, but just the way he left the club, it still...
Well, there's a Judas chance in there. I mean, you asked the question earlier about the fans, like the ones that pay the money. Do you know, like, some of these people work all hours God sends to go and kick the kid out and just this. And then when you do what I did and just leave and just go on to... You didn't even give Leicester City a chance. It just shows me personally, it was all about money. That's all it was about. And like, I don't begrudge anybody money. If you work your craft, I mean, I'm the firm believer, if your name's Steven Gerrard, you shouldn't because you've had a great career, it's gone straight to the top of management. I don't believe in that. I think you should earn your craft and work your way up. And yeah, then if you get the good money and this and that and the other, and you want to leave that club where you've done a good job for 2 or 3 years, and you then go on to better things. Not come and nick money off Leicester City and then after 3 months of the next season. I mean, you started the season okay. Do you know what I mean? You started the season okay.
And at the minute, this always seems doomed to failure anyway. You know, Lampard, Rooney.
Exactly.
You could just carry on listing them for the rest of the evening.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
it just doesn't work. I don't quite understand why clubs keep going with that.
I don't understand it either. I mean, you look at Eddie Howe. I mean, he's done his homework, isn't he? He's been at Bournemouth. He's brought Bournemouth up through 2 divisions. You know, the other team that come up, like, I mean, that bloke that's brought Luton up, he's got no money. Do you know, like, they all get overlooked a lot. Do you know, I mean, I was a fan of Sam Allardyce. He'd done his time in, like, I used to play against Notts County when I was at Mansfield. He was manager of Notts County. He took Notts County up. He took Bolton up. He went back down and took Bolton up again. And he'd earned his stripes to be able to go on to bigger things if he needed to. Do you know, like, he got a post at West Ham and he got a post at Newcastle. So when you've done earned your stripes being a manager, then, yeah, if you've been successful, then, yeah, go on to a bigger post. But giving players that have been phenomenal players, them big managerial roles, it's total different ball game being a manager. Do you know, as a player, it's a mental game when you're playing in front of lots of fans, but you've just got yourself to worry about, and then you've got to be a team player. But being a manager, you've got to think about how the food's being out, what training sessions the coaches are going to put on, who we play next week, the coaches, the dinner staff, this staff, that staff. You're thinking about 50 different avenues of the football club, and then you've got board meetings, and then you've got your technical director, your sports director, who's buying this player, what money we got. Mind-boggling job being a manager. Mind-boggling.
And last couple of questions, Scott, and there's one that I wanted to ask you. Does the 48-year-old Scott Eustace look back at his career and think that was one hell of a ride, or do you look back on your career and think, what if?
A bit of both, if I'm honest. I look back on my career and I applaud myself for getting where I got, because no disrespect to my parents or anything, I felt like I got there on my own. Being critical, I feel if I'd had a father figure, and I feel like football clubs nowadays, I feel like if they had a mentor, more mentors there, because as young boys, I don't know how it is nowadays, but going back to my day, you're competing. Everything's a competition. Like, you're playing against the next man there to try and get in the team, or to try and get a contract, or try and this and try and that, try and renew a contract. Sometimes young boys are playing for the dad that didn't make it, or they're playing for the dad that absolutely loves football. And as a young kid, you don't ever want to let dad down. Now, the boys that ain't got dads, like I had a dad, but I didn't have a dad that was there at football. You're playing for yourself, but you've got nobody to talk to. Do you know, like, you seemed as like a little kiss arse if you're going up to the coach and asking the coach this, that and the other. So I feel like if you had a mentor there where the mentor would go and touch base with the child to see what his background was like. I mean, I didn't support Manchester United, but I was a fan of Alex Ferguson, because Alex Ferguson knew every background of every one of his players, even the players that were not even... like the Beckhams when they were 14 years old. He knew who his granddad supported. He knew who his dad supported. He went to watch youth team games and got a plane from whatever youth team game to the first team game. He touched base with what meant a lot to families. Do you know, like, if David Beckham seen him going to his dad's house, like, oh, this guy cares. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's enough of that in the game. And just for young lads trying to make it out there, I feel they should enjoy football from a young age, and if they've still got the hunger and the desire, then believe in themselves. Never stop trying to get to your goals. If you want a career in football, you do need a lot of luck, but you need the effort, and you've got to put the maximum effort in. And drinking, like I found out, does not go with sports. It doesn't go with sports. You've got to do one or the other. If you want to try and have a career in in sport, then you just leave the drink. The drinking will always be there.
And the last question, Scott, I suppose 2 parts to it. What does the future have in store for Scott Eustace, and how do you view football, the sport now?
I really enjoy football at the top end of it, watching the top end of it. Players at the top of the game who do it week in, week out, how they live their lives, how they conduct themselves. I used to love Paul Scholes, he was never in the papers. Everything that I adhere to is something that I didn't do myself, and what I'd like to do, I'd like to be a mentor. The things that I talk about, I'd like to go to Leicester City once I am in a good place myself. I'm not saying I'm in a bad place, but you get bills and you get kid problems and you get this and you get that. So once I am stable myself, more stable than I am at the moment, I'd like to go to a Leicester City and say to them, like, do you know, is there a role for me where I can tell my story or just be a mentor to kids and be a platform? Because I've had the highs of playing in front of these fans, and I've had the highs of experiencing this much money, and then I've been here and I've been in hostels and I've been on the street and I've had to stack shelves in Tesco's, and I've had to learn to do this job or that job, or learn to work with people that I've had no experience doing, then try a trade and try this trade and try that trade, or learn to be a lorry driver and adapting. So if there's just something that could nurture young boys that have to deal with disappointment, because there's not a role for football for all them boys that get taken on as an academy player. And even when they're not making it at 25, they still have no idea what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So between the ages of 16 and say 25, 26, when they've not made it, I'd like to see if there's a role for Scott Eustace in the environment where I could nurture kids and just be somebody to talk to, do you know, to guide them.
I think you're absolutely right, because it's not just football experience, it's life experience.
It is
isn't
life experience, yeah.
And you've lived that life, and you can pass on that knowledge, that experience, advice, guidance.
Yeah.
And maybe
I've definitely bought the ticket and t-shirt, worn the t-shirt in a lot of avenues of life, and I'm here today, and I don't really have words for young lads, because I didn't have them thoughts of being a footballer at a young age. But those that have got them thoughts, then you listen to your parents, and a word for parents as well. Let your kid enjoy football as well, and let your kid do it for himself and not for you. Don't let the kid live your dream. Let him live his own dream. And if he wants to live his own dream, back him, support him, push him, but don't drown him. And sometimes you take a child to so many different teams. There's 4 or 5 different clubs teaching him different things, and it can bamboozle him. Let your child express himself at the footballer he is, and let him enjoy it. Once the enjoyment goes, the interest goes.
I think that's a fantastic way to end this podcast. Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure. We said that hour would go quickly.
Is that the hour,
indeed. The hour. Thanks very much for your time, mate.
Thanks, Justin.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.